For the first time in history, the U.S. national debt soaring past $15 trillion, as you see over my shoulder. This comes as the House of Representatives will now vote on a balanced budget amendment. Today, they'll do it. That means the government will not be allowed to spend more than it takes in if the House has its way. Does that sound good? But does the bill actually stand a chance? Joining us right now, House Chief Deputy Whip, Congressman Peter Roskam. Congressman, why go for this now when most of the focus should be on the super committee?
Well, we should go for it now because can you imagine how differently this would be, Brian, if this had passed back in 1995, the last time it was seriously considered? I mean, to your point, we have a $15 trillion debt problem that is just having a crushing impact. Yeah, the super committee is incredibly important, but moving this forward at the same time in order to get the balanced budget concept in place, I think is something that is an opportunity we can't pass up on.
And of course, it's going to pass the House and it'll stop dead in the Senate. Not the case in 1995, where that passed the House. It was one vote shy of passing in the Senate. What's changed?
Well, here's what's changed. I mean, now, as you know, this is a supermajority requirement in the House. So what does that mean? That means simple majority. Republicans alone in the House can't pass it because we need Democrats' help, because it is an amendment to the Constitution. So it's going to take 50 Democrats today. Now, unfortunately, the Democratic leadership, two of whom have voted for this in the past, have now flipped their positions, taken a partisan position, and are urging their colleagues to vote against it. I hope that Democrat rank-and-file members will shrug that off and say, you know what, we're going to do the right thing for the country here, and we're going to join with Republicans and pass it.
One of those people is Steny Hoyer that voted for it, now will vote against it. This is what he said, essentially blaming President Bush. Under President Bush, Republicans exploded the deficit and abandoned pay-go, along with the principle that we ought to pay for what we buy. We do not have a spending problem or a revenue problem. We have a pay-for problem. But in reality, you could say the Bush tax cuts. You could talk about the prescription drug plan. You could talk about anything you want with the wars. But in the end, in 2007, our deficit was $161 billion. That is totally livable. You can live on that. You can't live on and sustain you can't sustain a country the way we're living now.
No, these numbers don't add up, and all we've got to do is look across the Atlantic and look at the few choices that Europe has. They've got one bad choice after another bad choice, and we've got a decision to make as a country. We can decide that we're going to take this problem on now, be forthright about it, and recognize that our revenues and expenses don't meet and deal with this, or we can say, well, let's just shrug it off. And unfortunately, the Democratic leadership is choosing to shrug it off, and I think that's really, really unfortunate.
And unfortunate, too, is the congressional approval rating. We know how low it is, even in single digits. They did a little study, and they said, well, how low is it compared to other people who seem to be unpopular? For example, communists. You rank below communists in the country at 11%. The BP people that were responsible for the oil spill, they had 16% approval. Nixon's popularity in the middle of Watergate was 23%. Why is Congress looked at so unfavorably by this country?
Well, I think for examples just like this. So, for example, there was an earlier version of the balanced budget amendment that did not enjoy Democrat support. So we brought today this historic version, the one that almost came within a whisker of passing in 1995. And now you've got Democrat leadership that is shunning that for a partisan reason, and I think the public's eyes glaze over and they say, look, enough of this nonsense. I think it would be an incredible boost to the economy. It would be an incredible boost to the confidence of the country if we were able to move this out today on a bipartisan basis and put the debate over in the United States Senate and ultimately send this out to the states and let the states decide.
So if every Republican votes for it, how many Democrats will you need?
You need about 50 Democrats to shrug off the bad advice of their leadership.
If you don't say so yourself. Representative Peter Roskam, thanks so much for joining us today. Good luck with the vote.
Thank you.